I'm Olivia Reed, and my in-laws never believed in my culinary dreams. They owned a successful, old-fashioned diner, the Cornerstone Cafe, and scoffed at my aspirations to open a fine dining establishment, Aura. They actively worked to undermine my launch, spreading rumors and interfering with my suppliers, convinced I would fail and return to their traditional ways. Despite their efforts, my restaurant eventually flourished, earning critical acclaim. Years later, their beloved diner faced financial ruin, brought to its knees by changing tastes and poor management. It was then, surprisingly, that they came to me, desperate for a lifeline. If you're enjoying this story already, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe to hear what happened when I reappeared a year later. My earliest memories are steeped in the rich, comforting aroma of my grandmother's kitchen. A symphony of cinnamon and warm yeast from her famous apple fritters, the savory depths of a slow-simmering beef bourguignon, the bright, herbaceous scent of fresh basil she'd plucked from her window box. Sundays at her home weren't just meals. They were meticulously composed culinary symphonies, each dish a carefully chosen note in a harmonious family gathering. This was where my passion for food truly ignited, not merely as sustenance, but as an intricate art form, a profound language that transcended words and spoke directly to the soul. I spent countless hours beside her, a small, eager shadow absorbing every meticulous technique, every whispered secret of herbs and spices, every nuance of timing. She possessed an intuitive understanding of flavors, a magic that transformed simple ingredients into extraordinary experiences. Crucially, unlike my own parents, who viewed cooking as a domestic chore and a fleeting pastime, Grandma Lily saw and encouraged my experimental spirit. "It's a lovely hobby, Olivia," my mother would often say with a strained smile, her eyes subtly conveying, "but you need a stable profession, something concrete." This gentle, yet persistent dismissal, however, only fueled my determination to prove that food could be more than just sustenance. It could be an experience, a career, a life's true calling. My sketchbook, crammed with intricate plating ideas and flavor pairings, became my constant companion. When I met Daniel Kincaid, I fell head over heels for his unwavering kindness, his quick, infectious wit, and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. He was charming, attentive, and shared my boundless love for laughter, for quiet evenings, and for exploring hidden corners of our city. However, marrying into the Kincaid family meant inevitably entering the formidable orbit of the Cornerstone Cafe, their revered family diner. For over 50 years, the Cornerstone Cafe had been a local institution, a beloved beacon of comfort food that served up hearty breakfasts, classic, no-frills burgers, and endless refills of strong, black coffee. Arthur and Alina Kincaid, Daniel's parents, embodied the diner's unpretentious ethos. Arthur, with his booming laugh and ever-present apron, prided himself on efficiency and consistency, while Alina, meticulous and observant, ensured every customer felt like family. Family gatherings, which became an almost weekly ritual after Daniel and I exchanged vows, inevitably revolved around the Cornerstone Cafe. Conversations at dinner tables, often held in the diner's back booth after closing hours, frequently drifted into discussions about profit margins, supplier negotiations, and the latest disgruntled cook who couldn't handle the breakfast rush. The diner was not just their business. It was their identity, their legacy, their entire world. My culinary aspirations, however, diverged sharply, almost violently, from their greasy spoon legacy. While they championed the familiar, the consistent, the unchallenging fare that had sustained generations, I dreamed of something entirely different. Elevated cuisine, complex flavor profiles, innovative techniques that bordered on scientific, and an unwavering emphasis on fresh, hyper-seasonal ingredients. I spent my evenings devouring cookbooks by avant-garde chefs like Farron Adria and Grant Achatz, meticulously researching molecular gastronomy, and sketching out elaborate concepts for dishes that were as visually stunning as they were tantalizingly delicious. I enrolled in the prestigious Culinary Institute of America, determined to hone my craft, to refine my innate talent into something truly professional. My in-laws, however, viewed my dedication as an amusing, perhaps even wasteful, diversion. "Why bother with all that fancy stuff, Olivia?" Arthur would often chuckle during family dinners, his voice laced with patronizing amusement. "People just want a good, honest meal, not something they need a dictionary to understand." Eleanor, ever the pragmatist, would add, with a thinly veiled concern aimed at Daniel, "Daniel, aren't you worried she'll try to put foam on your eggs?" Honestly, who eats that? Their comments, always delivered with a seemingly benign smile or a jovial chuckle, were nevertheless tinged with a deep-seated, dismissive air, a subtle but persistent undermining of my burgeoning professional ambitions. Daniel, ever the peacemaker, found himself perpetually caught between his unwavering loyalty to his family and his burgeoning love for me. He would offer weak, almost apologetic reassurances like, "They just don't understand it, honey. It's different." He loved my cooking, certainly. He devoured my experimental dishes with an almost childlike enthusiasm, but his ingrained loyalty to his parents and their established business ran far deeper than his comprehension of my passion. He genuinely believed that eventually I would tire of my flights of fancy and settle for a quiet, supportive role, perhaps even joining the Cornerstone Cafe's management team, leaving my grand illusions behind. He simply couldn't grasp the depth of my commitment, the burning, unyielding desire to create something truly exceptional, something that defined me. My graduation from the Culinary Institute of America with top honors didn't change their perspective one iota. It was met with polite applause, certainly a few forced smiles, but no genuine recognition of my achievement as a professional milestone. "Well, now you can truly help Daniel with the books at the diner, dear," Eleanor suggested at my graduation dinner, her eyes twinkling with a self-satisfied gleam, completely missing, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, the profound significance of the moment for me. I had envisioned launching my very own restaurant, a sanctuary where food was an undeniable art form and every single meal told a unique, compelling story. This vision, which I hesitantly shared with Daniel, was met with a mixture of polite, if somewhat bewildered, interest from him, and thinly veiled scorn from his parents. The chasm between my ambitious culinary dreams and the Kincaid family's deeply ingrained, traditional expectations for me was growing wider with each passing year. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this fundamental, unbridgeable difference would inevitably lead to an unavoidable, perhaps even destructive, clash. The Cornerstone Cafe, their legacy, felt like an anchor, pulling me back from the soaring heights of my own aspirations. After graduation, I poured every ounce of my formidable energy and unwavering passion into bringing Aura to life. The name, I believed, perfectly encapsulated my vision. A dining experience that was not just refined and luxurious, but also deeply accessible, transforming familiar flavors into something extraordinary and unexpected. I meticulously crafted a comprehensive business plan, detailing every single element from the unique, hyper-local farm-to-table sourcing I envisioned, to the elegant, minimalist decor that would create an intimate yet sophisticated ambience. My entire life savings, combined with a significant, yet risky loan from a visionary angel investor named Clara, who truly believed in my unconventional concept, formed the initial capital. I scoured the city for the perfect location, finally finding a charming, albeit forgotten, storefront nestled in a burgeoning arts district. It was far enough from the well-trodden path of the Cornerstone Cafe to establish my own distinct identity, yet close enough to remain an integral part of the city's dynamic culinary landscape. I felt a surge of excitement, a sense of destiny taking root. The Kincaids, though feigning a superficial level of support, began their subtle, insidious campaign of sabotage almost immediately. Daniel, bless his kind but often ineffectual heart, tried valiantly to mediate, to smooth over the growing cracks in our family dynamic. But his attempts were often clumsy, transparent, and ultimately ineffective. He'd relay his parents, Concerns about my unrealistic menu prices or my unconventional ingredient choices, always couched as well-meaning, fatherly advice. "Dad just thinks you're aiming too high, Liv," he'd explain, wringing his hands. "He thinks people want comfort, not whatever foam is. Just practical worries." Arthur himself would occasionally drop by the renovation site, not to offer genuine help or encouragement, but to make pointed, loud remarks about the exorbitant cost of my custom-built kitchen equipment or the impracticality of my imported Italian tiles. "Seems a bit much for a first-time restaurateur, doesn't it?" he'd muse, his voice booming loud enough for my contractors and anyone within earshot to clearly hear. "Just saying, money doesn't grow on trees, Olivia." Eleanor's tactics, however, were far more insidious, more difficult to pinpoint. She was a true master of the backhanded compliment and the quietly damaging rumor, a whisper campaign cloaked in concern. When I desperately sought to establish accounts with local organic farmers for fresh, seasonal produce, a crucial and non-negotiable element of my concept, I found myself inexplicably stonewalled. Farmers I'd spoken with previously, who had expressed enthusiastic interest in supplying Aura, suddenly became too busy, fully committed, or simply stopped returning my calls. It took weeks, frustrating, agonizing weeks, to subtly uncover that Eleanor had been making discreet, seemingly innocuous phone calls, gently suggesting to these farmers that Aura was a risky venture with an unstable future, and that I, Olivia Reed, was too inexperienced to manage reliable, consistent supply chains. One farmer, a gruff but honest man, after I pressed him with a desperate plea, finally admitted, his voice low, "Mrs. Kincaid. She's a big customer for the diner, always has been, knows everyone. She just said you were, maybe not the most reliable for consistent orders, didn't want to upset her." It was utterly infuriating, a betrayal cloaked in plausible deniability and impossible to prove directly. My in-laws also subtly influenced some of our shared acquaintances within the tightly knit local business community, gently swaying them away from my future restaurant. I'd overhear devastating snippets of conversations at seemingly innocent family gatherings. "Oh, Olivia's place? Aura, it's so modern, not really for a relaxed, easy evening, you know. The Cornerstone Cafe is much more, well, traditional, much more comforting." Daniel's Aunt Beatrice, a prominent and influential figure in the local ladies' club, who had initially expressed excitement about my venture, suddenly seemed mysteriously unavailable for the private tasting event I'd painstakingly planned to generate early buzz and positive word of mouth. Later, through a sympathetic friend, I learned she'd been subtly convinced by Eleanor that a new charity luncheon at the Cornerstone Cafe was a far higher priority for her club's funds and attention. These seemingly minor, isolated incidents, accumulating insidiously over months, created a quiet, insidious undercurrent of doubt and difficulty, slowly eroding my foundation before I'd even officially opened my doors. Despite these disheartening and often infuriating obstacles, I pushed forward with a fierce, unyielding resolve, fueled by a stubborn refusal to let their negativity extinguish my burgeoning dream. I tirelessly sought out alternative, often smaller and harder to find, suppliers, cultivated new, more resilient connections within the local food scene, and worked tirelessly, often clocking 18-hour days, to compensate for every hurdle they placed in my path. My mentor, the venerable chef Isabelle Dubois, a renowned and almost legendary figure in the city's culinary scene, was my unwavering rock. "They're trying to trip you, Olivia," she warned, her wise eyes seeing through the Kincaids' thinly veiled animosity, "because they see your undeniable potential. They fear what you represent, your innovation. Show them that you're too focused on your own brilliant path to stumble over their petty obstacles." Her words resonated deeply within me, bolstering my resolve and reminding me that true success was about standing firm in my vision. The opening night of Aura was a whirlwind of controlled chaos, exhilarating triumph, and profound relief. The initial reviews were overwhelmingly positive, praising the innovative, meticulously crafted menu and the intimate, elegant ambience. Yet my in-laws were conspicuously absent, feigning last-minute diner emergencies that conveniently coincided with my grand opening. Their absence spoke louder than any words, a clear, unmistakable message that despite my immense efforts and burgeoning success, they remained unwilling to genuinely support my independent culinary journey. The battle for respect, I realized with a heavy heart, had only just begun. The initial months of Aura were a relentless, exhausting uphill climb. Despite the overwhelmingly positive early reviews and the surge of initial curiosity, the subtle, insidious interference from my in-laws, combined with the inherent, formidable challenges of launching a new fine dining establishment, meant that customer flow remained frustratingly inconsistent. The Arts District location, while charming and possessing undeniable potential, hadn't yet fully blossomed into the vibrant, bustling foodie destination I'd envisioned, and attracting a steady, reliable stream of discerning clientele proved harder and more agonizing than anticipated. There were far too many nights when only a handful of tables were occupied, and the echoing silence in the elegantly appointed dining room felt deafening, a stark, painful contrast to the perpetually bustling, noisy warmth of the Cornerstone Cafe. Every slow evening gnawed relentlessly at my confidence, seeding insidious doubts in my mind, making me question if my in-laws had, in their cynical, traditional way, been right all along. Perhaps my dream was too grand, too niche, too far removed from the comfort food people truly desired. Financial strain became a constant, unwelcome companion, a shadow clinging to every decision. My initial capital, painstakingly saved and borrowed, dwindled at an alarming rate, far faster than expected, largely due to unexpected startup costs, the relentless stream of supplier issues, and the stubbornly slower than projected revenue. I often found myself making agonizingly difficult decisions, postponing essential equipment upgrades, delaying crucial marketing initiatives, or stretching payments, just to ensure payroll was met for my dedicated, hardworking staff. There were weeks, far too many weeks, when I didn't take a single cent of salary, relying solely on Daniel's stable, albeit modest, income from the diner and my rapidly diminishing personal savings. Daniel, though supportive in spirit and genuinely wanting me to succeed, grew increasingly anxious about the relentless financial pressure. "Maybe we should just scale back, live," he'd suggest gently, his voice laced with concern after another agonizingly quiet Tuesday night. "The diner always has a steady income. It's safe, predictable." His words, though undoubtedly well-intentioned and born of love, felt like a subtle yet painful reinforcement of his parents' deeply ingrained belief that my dreams were simply too grand, too ambitious, too inherently risky for anyone to truly pursue. Despite the gnawing struggles, there were moments of profound, exhilarating triumph that kept the flickering flame of my ambition burning bright. Our weekend tasting menus, meticulously crafted and conceptually daring, consistently sold out, drawing rave reviews from adventurous diners, influential local food bloggers, and early adopters of culinary trends. These events were a lifeline, a testament to the core of my vision. One evening, an ordinary Tuesday that felt like all the other slow ones, a prominent food critic, notoriously discerning and famously anonymous, dined quietly at Aura. The following week, his review, majestically titled "A Revelation in the Arts District," lauded my innovative use of local ingredients and my fearless, boundary-pushing approach to flavor. He wrote with an almost poetic flourish, "Olivia Reed is not just cooking. She is crafting edible narratives, pushing culinary boundaries where others actively play it safe, daring to elevate the familiar to the sublime. Aura is a gem waiting to be discovered, a whisper of greatness in a city too often content with the conventional." This review was a true lifeline, a beacon in the storm, bringing an immediate surge of new, curious reservations and a much-needed, profound boost to our collective morale. It validated every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. My small, dedicated team, My brilliant sous chef, Leo Chen, a quiet force of nature with an uncanny palate, and our effervescent front-of-house manager, Sarah, whose warmth radiated through the dining room, became my unwavering culinary family. They believed in my vision as fiercely, if not more so, than I did, weathering the lean times with unwavering loyalty and an almost defiant optimism. Leo, with his quiet strength, encyclopedic knowledge of ingredients, and incredible talent for execution, was more than just a colleague. He was a true partner in the relentless rhythm of the kitchen, often working alongside me for extra, unpaid hours without a single complaint. Sarah, with her innate grace, infectious smile, and impeccable service, ensured every single guest felt cherished and valued, regardless of the night's revenue. Their unwavering dedication fueled my own, reminding me in the darkest hours that I wasn't alone in this ambitious, often lonely, endeavor. Family gatherings, however, remained a treacherous minefield, a stark contrast to the burgeoning camaraderie within my own restaurant. While Arthur and Alina would feign a baffling ignorance of the overwhelmingly positive reviews, Daniel would often try, awkwardly, to bring them up, only to be met with dismissive comments that felt like tiny, sharp cuts. "Oh, that little article," Alina would say with a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand. "The Cornerstone Cafe gets featured in the local paper all the time. Nothing new there, darling." Arthur would invariably add with a loud, theatrical sigh, "People want honest, hearty food, not some tiny speck of art on a plate. It's a passing fad, Olivia, mark my words." These interactions were a constant, painful reminder of the widening chasm between us, a simmering resentment that sometimes felt harder to bear, more emotionally draining, than the restaurant's very real financial challenges. Yet with each glowing review, each sold-out tasting event, each customer who left Aura with a look of genuine wonder on their face, I felt a quiet, powerful strength building within me. A growing, unshakable conviction that I was indeed on the right path, regardless of their approval, their understanding, or their insidious attempts to undermine me. Aura, born of struggle, resilience, and an unwavering passion, was slowly, steadily, finding its own magnificent voice. The true turning point for Aura arrived not with a bang, but with a whisper, then a roar that reverberated with astonishing speed through the entire culinary world. Months of relentless dedication, meticulously crafted, innovative menus, and a consistent, almost obsessive pursuit of culinary excellence culminated in an anonymous inspection from a notoriously prestigious culinary guide. We knew nothing of it, of course, until the phone call came, weeks later, from an editor whose voice held an almost reverential tone. "Miss Reed," she began, her words unfolding slowly, deliberately, "it's my distinct pleasure to inform you that Aura has been awarded its first Michelin star." I remember the world seeming to tilt on its very axis, a disorienting rush of utter disbelief, followed by a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated elation that threatened to burst from my chest. A Michelin star. It was the highest, most coveted accolade in the global restaurant industry, a universally recognized symbol of culinary genius, a profound testament to years of unwavering dedication, daring creative risk-taking, and countless, endless hours of toil, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of perfection. It wasn't just a symbol of success. It was, for me, absolute, irrefutable vindication. The announcement, when it finally broke, sent shockwaves throughout the city's tightly knit food scene. Reservations for Aura soared instantly, extending to a staggering 6-month waiting list almost literally overnight. Food critics, influential bloggers, and discerning gourmands from across the country descended upon our little restaurant nestled in the Arts District, eager to experience the phenomenon firsthand. Media interviews became a daily, almost hourly, occurrence, and my face, once largely unknown outside a small, dedicated circle of culinary enthusiasts, was suddenly plastered across glossy local magazines, prestigious national food blogs, and even national television segments. We swiftly expanded our kitchen team, leased additional space for private dining events, and meticulously streamlined our operations to meet the overwhelming, exhilarating demand. Aura, once a fragile, uncertain dream whispered into existence, had transformed, almost miraculously, into a culinary powerhouse. A shining beacon of innovation, exquisite taste, and uncompromising quality. My vision had not only come to fruition, it had transcended all expectations, soaring to heights even I had barely dared to imagine. Amidst this exhilarating whirlwind of unprecedented success, my in-laws' reaction was a painful, fascinating study in thinly veiled resentment and forced, almost theatrical, politeness. Daniel, bless his genuinely kind but perpetually conflicted heart, truly tried to share my joy, his excitement evident. But his enthusiasm was constantly tempered by the palpable, almost suffocating, tension emanating from his parents. At a strained, uncomfortable family dinner held ostensibly to celebrate the announcement, Arthur begrudgingly offered a toast, raising his water glass with a stiff, almost rigid arm. To Olivia and her little star. The words were delivered with a dismissive wave of his hand, as if swatting away an annoying fly, a deliberate undermining of the monumental achievement. Eleanor, ever the more subtly aggressive Kincaid, added with a saccharine smile, "It's certainly modern, very trendy, but I do hope people remember where real comfort food comes from, dear. The kind that sticks to your ribs, not just floats on air." She then, with a calculated deliberateness, launched into an effusive, lengthy monologue about the Cornerstone Cafe's latest special, a particularly greasy, uninspired meatloaf, as if to deliberately overshadow and diminish my hard-won Michelin star. Andrew, Daniel's younger brother, who was starting to take on a larger, more hands-on role at the diner, was even more direct and cutting in his disdain. "Honestly, Olivia," he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension, "all that fuss over tiny portions and a few sprigs of herbs on a plate. Give me a good, honest burger any day, something you can actually sink your teeth into. This star business is just for snobs with too much money and no taste." Daniel, visibly uncomfortable, tried to interject, "Andrew, come on. Liv worked incredibly hard for this. It's a huge achievement." But I, feeling a sudden surge of defiant strength, cut him off. "It's fine, Daniel," I said, my voice calm but firm, meeting Andrew's sneering gaze directly. "Some people just prefer mediocrity. They're simply not capable of appreciating true culinary artistry." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken animosity, a clear, undeniable indicator that despite my undeniable, globally recognized success, their deeply ingrained perception of me, and their relentless desire to diminish my accomplishments, remained stubbornly, painfully unchanged. This Michelin star, while a profound professional crowning achievement and a testament to my perseverance, felt like a burning, agonizing wedge driving an even deeper, more painful divide between me and my husband's family. A chasm I increasingly wondered could ever be bridged. As Aura cemented its formidable reputation as a true culinary destination, our success became not just undeniable, but monumental. We expanded our seating capacity, meticulously designed and added a dedicated pastry kitchen, and launched a wildly popular cooking class series, generating significant additional revenue and fostering deep community engagement. My highly skilled team, now significantly larger and operating with an almost telepathic precision, functioned like a well-oiled machine, anticipating every need, executing every dish flawlessly. My name, Olivia Reed, became synonymous with innovative, thoughtful cuisine, with a fearlessness in flavor pairing and an unwavering commitment to quality. I was deluged with invitations to participate in prestigious food festivals across the country, to guest chef at renowned restaurants in culinary capitals, and even to consult on high-profile restaurant concepts around the globe. Aura was no longer just a restaurant. It was a flourishing culinary brand, a testament to unwavering passion, fierce resilience, and unyielding artistic integrity. Meanwhile, persistent whispers about trouble at the Cornerstone Cafe began to reach me through Daniel, who always seemed anxious relaying them, and various sympathetic family acquaintances. The diner, once a bustling local favorite, a symbol of Kincaid longevity, was slowly but steadily losing its luster, its once familiar glow fading to a dull sheen. Arthur and Aline, staunchly set in their traditional ways, vehemently resisted any form of modernization or adaptation. Their menu remained tragically unchanged for decades, a static relic in a dynamic culinary landscape. Their decor grew increasingly dated, worn, and uninviting. And their once lauded customer service, once praised for its familiar, comforting charm, became complacent, bordering on indifferent. They scoffed loudly at the very idea of online ordering, dismissed food delivery apps as frivolous fads, and stubbornly refused to update their ancient, clunky point-of-sale system, which frequently malfunctioned. "People come here for tradition, Olivia," Arthur would declare with a dismissive wave of his hand whenever Daniel, cautiously, dared to suggest even a minor update. "They don't want anything newfangled or complicated." Daniel, who had gradually taken over more of the day-to-day management from his aging, increasingly resistant parents, found himself perpetually caught between their stubborn, unyielding adherence to outdated tradition and the undeniable, relentless shifts in the market. He lacked the true authority to implement significant, much-needed changes without their explicit, almost impossible to obtain approval, and his own ideas, often cautious and incremental, were typically overruled, met with a wall of ingrained Kincaid conservatism. I heard increasingly alarming stories of steadily declining lunch crowds, shrinking dinner reservations, and a growing, vocal number of negative online reviews flooding sites like Yelp and Google, complaining bitterly about stale coffee, notoriously greasy food, sluggish service, and an overall lack of vibrancy. Andrew, who was ostensibly supposed to be bringing in new ideas and a fresh perspective, seemed far more interested in blindly cutting costs by using cheaper, inferior ingredients rather than focusing on the fundamental pillars of quality or innovation, further alienating their once loyal, now increasingly frustrated, customer base. The Kincaid family's overweening pride, their absolute refusal to acknowledge their shortcomings, ultimately became their undoing. They stubbornly refused to acknowledge the rapidly changing culinary landscape, the profound impact of new, trendier eateries popping up all around the city, offering fresh, exciting options. They clung desperately to the antiquated notion that good, honest food, their definition of it, would always prevail, even as their competitors fully embraced fresh concepts, implemented true farm-to-table sourcing, and mastered the intricacies of social media marketing. Their collective resistance to meaningful change was catastrophically compounded by Daniel and Andrew's deep inexperience in strategic business management, leading to a series of shockingly poor financial decisions. I learned, through hushed whispers and leaked insider information, that they had taken out a substantial, high-interest loan ostensibly to renovate the kitchen. But instead of investing in modern, efficient, revenue-generating equipment, they'd opted for cheap, unreliable replacements that frequently broke down, incurring costly, unbudgeted repairs and severely disrupting service, infuriating both staff and customers. The contrast between Aura's vibrant, flourishing success and the Cornerstone Cafe's quiet, agonizing decline became stark, almost unbearable to witness. While my restaurant was constantly evolving, gracefully adapting, and fearlessly innovating, theirs was stagnating, a fossilized relic in a dynamic, rapidly evolving industry. I watched from a distance, a bittersweet, almost detached observer, as the once vibrant heart of the Kincaid family business slowly but surely tarnished, its once bright sheen dulling into an irreversible decay. There was a part of me, a small, dark corner of my soul, that felt a quiet, almost perverse satisfaction, a deep sense of karmic retribution. They had dismissed my dreams with contempt, actively sabotaged my efforts with malicious intent, and clung rigidly to their outdated notions of success, their unwavering belief in their own superiority. Now, their antiquated empire was crumbling, not due to external, uncontrollable forces, but from their own crippling internal resistance to change, their profound inability to recognize the evolving world around them, and their sheer, painful arrogance. The once solid cornerstone was now crumbling, dragging them down into financial oblivion. The call came on a brisk, unusually clear autumn morning, disrupting the usual, rhythmic hum of Aura's bustling brunch prep. My phone, typically reserved for urgent kitchen matters, important supplier calls, or personal conversations with Daniel, displayed a number I hadn't seen in months. A number that still, inexplicably, sent a subtle jolt through me. Arthur Kincaid. My heart gave a strange, complicated lurch, a confusing mix of initial surprise, followed swiftly by a wave of apprehension, and finally, a familiar flicker of the old, long-simmering resentment. 3 years had passed since Aura had been awarded its coveted Michelin star. 3 years since their last truly dismissive comments had cut me to the quick. 3 years of almost complete silence from Arthur and Alina regarding my professional life. And now this. I stepped quickly into my private office, a small, exquisitely organized space of quiet reflection amidst the controlled chaos of the kitchen, closed the door behind me, and took a deep, centering breath before answering. "Olivia Reed," I said, my voice steady, professional, devoid of any discernible emotion. "Olivia," Arthur's voice, usually booming with an almost arrogant self-assurance, sounded strained, almost frail, thinned by what sounded like desperation and exhaustion. It's your father-in-law." He cleared his throat, a nervous, almost pathetic habit I hadn't heard from him in years, a stark contrast to his usual bluster. Are you busy?" The question itself was loaded, dripping with a desperation he rarely, if ever, allowed to show. "I'm always busy, Arthur," I replied, allowing a touch of coolness, a hint of steel to enter my tone. "What can I do for you?" There was a long, uncomfortable pause, filled only by the distant, rhythmic clatter of pots and pans from my bustling kitchen, a subtle reminder of the success he so desperately needed. "We're in trouble, Olivia," he finally admitted, the words delivered with a palpable reluctance, as if each one physically pained him, tearing at his immense pride. "The Cornerstone Cafe is facing some significant difficulties. More significant than we anticipated. We're in deep." My mind immediately raced, sifting through the numerous rumors I'd heard over the past months, the increasingly vocal complaints, the growing negativity about the diner's decline. "What kind of difficulties, Arthur?" I asked, feigning a neutrality I didn't entirely feel. Part of me, the raw, wounded part, wanted to press him, to force him to articulate the full, humiliating extent of their precipitous decline, to taste the bitterness of his confession, but another, more strategic part, knew that now was not the time for petty triumph, but for crucial information. "Financial difficulties," he confessed, the words barely a whisper, imbued with a profound sense of shame. "Serious ones. The bank, they're calling in some lines of credit we had extended. And frankly, Daniel and Andrew. They've made some missteps, big missteps, catastrophic missteps." He sighed heavily, a sound of utter defeat of a man utterly broken. "We're looking at bankruptcy, Olivia, within weeks, potentially. The Cornerstone Cafe, the legacy, everything." The word hung in the air. Bankruptcy. The Cornerstone Cafe, the once unassailable bastion of Kincaid pride, the very foundation upon which their dismissal of my dreams, their endless derision, and their active sabotage were built. The irony was not merely palpable. It was a bitter, exquisite symphony playing in my ears. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely, despite the long, painful history, despite the years of their unkindness. "But I'm still not entirely sure what this has to do with me, Arthur. After 3 years of silence." Another uncomfortable, drawn-out silence stretched between us, heavier this time, pregnant with unspoken humiliation. "We need capital, Olivia," Arthur finally managed, his voice regaining a fraction of its former authority, albeit with a desperate, pleading edge that was completely uncharacteristic. $300,000. It would buy us time, just enough to cover immediate debts, keep us afloat until the summer tourist season truly kicks in. We'd pay you back, of course, with interest. will sign anything. $300,000. It was a staggering sum, a number that represented a significant portion of Aura's carefully accumulated operational reserves and a substantial chunk of my own personal investments. That's a considerable amount, Arthur, I stated, allowing my genuine shock to color my voice slightly to mask the flicker of triumph that threatened to surface. I'd need a comprehensive, audited understanding of the Cornerstone Cafe's current financial situation before I could even consider such a request. He immediately bristled, a fleeting echo of his old self. This is a family matter, Olivia. We don't need you dissecting our books or questioning our business decisions. We just need a short-term loan from family. That's what family does. The old Kincaid pride, even in the face of imminent ruin, was still trying to dictate terms. Family didn't seem to matter when you sabotaged my suppliers, Arthur. I reminded him, my voice firm, unwavering, a steel rod hidden beneath a silken glove. Or when you actively spread malicious rumors about my restaurant. Family didn't matter when you publicly disparaged my work and scoffed at my Michelin star. So, if you're asking for my money, this will be a business transaction, with full transparency, complete disclosure, and my non-negotiable conditions. Otherwise, I added, looking out from my office window at the thriving, bustling street below, a clear representation of my own hard-won success, I have other, far more profitable ways to invest Aura's capital, ways that don't involve a toxic legacy. The line went silent again, heavier this time, more strained, as Arthur audibly wrestled with his immense pride and the undeniable, terrifying necessity. Fine, he finally capitulated, his voice thin with defeat, barely above a whisper. When can you come to the diner? We'll have everything ready, anything you need. Not the diner, Arthur, I corrected, my voice decisive. We'll meet on neutral ground. My financial advisor's office has a conference room we can use, and I want Daniel and Alina there. Andrew, too. Everyone involved. After setting a date for the following week, I hung up, a strange, complex mix of emotions swirling within me. The call I'd never expected had finally come, and now, finally, after all these years, it was my turn to set the terms. The game had changed. The air in Karen Lewis's elegant, minimalist conference room crackled with a palpable, almost suffocating tension. My financial advisor, Karen, ever the picture of calm, unflappable professionalism, had meticulously arranged the space, ensuring a sense of clinical neutrality that was both comforting and unsettling. I arrived first, dressed in a sharp, impeccably tailored chef's coat, a subtle but powerful nod to my professional identity. The discreetly embroidered logo of Aura on the sleeve, subtly visible beneath my blazer, felt like a silent, defiant banner. I felt armored, prepared for battle, fortified by years of struggle and the undeniable triumphs I had forged myself. Arthur and Alina Kincaid entered shortly after, their usual robust confidence noticeably absent, replaced by a strained formality. Daniel followed, his eyes darting nervously, unable to meet my gaze. A sullen-faced Andrew trailed behind, typically loud and boisterous. He was uncharacteristically quiet, fiddling incessantly with his phone, avoiding eye contact. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice clear, unwavering, and utterly devoid of emotion, cutting through the thick, awkward silence like a surgical knife. Karen, a beacon of efficiency at my side, handed each of them a thick folder containing a detailed financial disclosure form. "Before we discuss any potential investment," I explained, my gaze sweeping across their faces, "I need a complete and transparent overview of the Cornerstone Cafe's current financial health. Karen will guide us through this process." Arthur immediately bristled, a flicker of his old, imperious self returning. "I told you, Olivia, we just need a loan, not an audit. This is an unnecessary waste of time." Karen, ever the diplomat, interjected smoothly, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. Kincaid, any substantial capital injection, especially one of this magnitude, requires thorough due diligence. This is standard business practice for any prudent investor. Olivia is merely being professional, as I'm sure you can appreciate. Andrew scoffed audibly under his breath, a faint, familiar sneer curling his lips. Professional. Since when does a chef, a gourmet chef no less, know anything about real business? This is absurd. Before Daniel could offer his usual weak, mediating retort, I fixed Andrew with a steady, unblinking gaze that silenced him instantly. Since I built a Michelin-starred restaurant from the ground up, Andrew, what have you done, besides run your parents' diner into the ground with your innovative ideas? His face flushed a deep crimson, and he began to stammer a protest, but Arthur, surprisingly, silenced him with a quick, stern glance. The family dynamic had visibly shifted. "Let's focus," Arthur said, his voice clipped, devoid of its usual bluster. "What exactly do you need to know, Olivia? Let's just get this over with." Over the next 2 excruciating hours, the grim, unvarnished reality of the Cornerstone Cafe's precipitous decline was laid bare. Daniel and Andrew, clearly unprepared for the depth of scrutiny, stumbled through their explanations of unforeseen market shifts and unfortunate investment choices, their voices lacking conviction. However, Karen's pointed, incisive questions, meticulously guided by the insider information I had provided her, quickly exposed the deeper, more damning issues. Their attempts to modernize had been haphazard, poorly researched, and catastrophically executed. A disastrous, ill-conceived expansion into catering without proper infrastructure or a clear business model. A truly abysmal online ordering system that was so buggy it actively alienated rather than attracted customers. And a substantial, high-interest loan taken out for renovations that turned into little more than superficial cosmetic changes, with a significant, unaccounted-for portion of the funds seemingly disappearing into vague, ill-defined operational costs and inflated invoices. Most damningly, their stubborn, unyielding refusal to adapt their outdated menu or archaic management practices to modern consumer preferences had simply allowed their more agile, innovative competition to flourish, steadily siphoning away their once loyal customer base. So, I summarized, my voice flat, devoid of any discernible emotion, a dispassionate accounting of their failures. You systematically drove the Cornerstone Cafe into insolvency through a combination of stubborn, almost pig-headed resistance to essential change, a series of demonstrably poor financial decisions, and, frankly, undeniable incompetence in management. Daniel flinched as if struck, and Alina looked utterly mortified, her pale face betraying her inner turmoil. Arthur, however, finally looked directly at me, his gaze meeting mine, and I saw a flicker of something raw, something akin to despair, in his usually impenetrable eyes. "We made mistakes, Olivia," he conceded, his voice barely audible, a profound admission of defeat. "Big ones, devastating ones, but it's still our family legacy. Our employees, many of whom have been with us for decades, will lose everything. Their livelihoods, their futures. And what about the family who lost everything because of you?" I challenged, my voice rising slightly, the years of suppressed pain and anger finally breaking through the professional facade. "My dream, my first restaurant launch, you actively sabotaged it. You spread malicious rumors, you deliberately interfered with my suppliers, you publicly disparaged my work at every single opportunity. Do you remember, Arthur? Do you remember the lengths you went to undermine me?" Silence, thick and suffocating, filled the room. Alina began to weep softly, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her composure utterly shattered. Daniel finally looked up, his face etched with profound shame and regret. Arthur, however, though visibly shaken, remained stoic, his eyes fixed on mine, as if searching for something, perhaps a flicker of forgiveness, or simply a sign of what was to come. We were wrong, Olivia," he said, the words clearly painful for him to utter, extracted from the very core of his being. "We let our pride, our fear of change, blind us, completely blind us. We grossly underestimated you. We were unfair, terribly unfair. Cruel, even." It wasn't a full, heartfelt apology, not the one I had always, secretly, deeply dreamed of, but from Arthur Kincaid it was monumental, an earthquake in his rigid world. "And you, Andrew?" I prompted, turning my gaze to him, forcing him to acknowledge his part. He swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze, his fingers still nervously fiddling with his phone. I guess I was a jerk. A complete jerk. I was jealous of your talent, and I believed everything Dad said about your cooking not being real. I was wrong, I admit it. Good, I stated, cutting through the lingering tension with sharp precision. Because if I'm to help, it will be on my terms. Not just financial, but fundamental. This isn't just about money, it's about respect and a genuine shift in mindset. I pushed a new set of documents across the polished conference table, meticulously prepared by Karen, outlining my conditions. I'm prepared to invest $300,000. In exchange, I will receive a 51% controlling stake in the Cornerstone Cafe. This is non-negotiable. I will take over full operational management, with Daniel and Andrew retaining minor, advisory roles that will report directly to me. Your family will retain a non-voting minority share. And I paused, looking pointedly at Arthur and Alina, my gaze unwavering. There will be a public statement, issued jointly, acknowledging Aura's success, my culinary achievements, and my new leadership role in revitalizing the Cornerstone Cafe. Andrew gasped, 51%. You want to take over everything? You want to own our legacy? It's control or bankruptcy, I said simply, my voice ringing with finality. The choice is yours, and I will only agree if every member of this room publicly apologizes for their past actions towards me. Not just to me, but in a public forum, a joint statement. Arthur looked at Alina, his eyes wide with a desperate plea, then at Daniel, who slowly nodded, his shame still palpable. Finally, his gaze settled back on me, a mixture of despair, dawning realization, and grudging respect flickering in his eyes. The weight of generations of Kincaid pride clashed violently with the terrifying, immediate need for survival. "We'll sign," he said, his voice barely a whisper, defeat finally etched onto his features. "On your terms, Olivia, all of them." The signing of the agreement, just a week after that explosive, cathartic negotiation, was a solemn, almost ritualistic affair, devoid of any celebratory fanfare. It was held once again in Karen Lewis's hushed, professional office. Arthur and Alina, their faces grim but resigned, alongside a visibly subdued Daniel and a still sulking, resentful Andrew, affixed their signatures to the myriad of legal documents, symbolically relinquishing majority control of the Cornerstone Cafe. For me, it wasn't about power for its own sake, nor was it about exact, vindictive revenge. It was, rather, a profound, deeply personal act of demonstrating the tangible value of my own vision, of proving, unequivocally, that my chosen path, the path they had so viciously condemned, was not only legitimate and profoundly meaningful, but in this dire situation, utterly essential for their very survival. The $300,000 investment was immediately channeled into crucial debt repayment, settling long overdue supplier invoices, and initiating strategic, much-needed upgrades, breathing a desperately needed new life into the struggling, decaying diner. My first few months as the operational head of the Cornerstone Cafe were a whirlwind of relentless, almost superhuman work. My days began before dawn at Aura, overseeing the early morning prep, before shifting to the Cornerstone Cafe, where I immersed myself in every facet of its operation. I meticulously oversaw a comprehensive rebranding, subtly transforming the diner into the Cornerstone Cafe, a modern American diner. The new name delicately signaled its evolution while honoring its deep, comforting heritage. We introduced a completely revitalized menu, painstakingly retaining the beloved comfort food classics, but elevating them with fresh, locally sourced ingredients and refined, contemporary cooking techniques. The notoriously greasy meatloaf was replaced with a succulent, tender, slow-braised version. The stale, bitter coffee gave way to meticulously brewed, artisanal blends, and the infamous frozen burger patties were decisively swapped for custom blends of high-quality, grass-fed beef, meticulously ground in-house. Crucially, we wholeheartedly embraced modern technology, implementing a seamless online ordering system, launching a user-friendly, visually appealing website, and cultivating a vibrant, engaging social media presence, all things the Kincaids had fiercely resisted for years, viewing them as unnecessary, newfangled nonsense. The physical space of the diner also underwent a thoughtful, yet extensive, renovation. The dated, worn-out decor was replaced with a warm, inviting aesthetic that skillfully blended nostalgic diner elements, like the classic red vinyl booths and a gleaming chrome counter, with contemporary design touches, such as artisanal lighting and reclaimed wood accents. We upgraded the ancient kitchen equipment, investing in state-of-the-art ovens, grills, and refrigeration units, ensuring both efficiency and consistency in our food preparation. My extensive experience at Aura proved invaluable. I streamlined operations, implemented rigorous training programs for all staff members, from cooks to waitstaff, and fostered a new, vibrant culture of culinary excellence and unwavering customer-centric service. Many of the longtime employees, initially wary and skeptical of the radical changes, quickly adapted once they began to see the immediate, undeniable positive impact on customer numbers, glowing reviews, and perhaps most importantly, their newfound job security and morale. My relationship with my in-laws, particularly Arthur and Alina, slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to shift. They observed my unwavering dedication, my tireless work ethic, and the diner's undeniable resurgence with a growing mix of silent awe, bewildered surprise, and what appeared to be grudging, then genuine, respect. Arthur, initially distant and outwardly dismissive, started making daily visits, not to critique or find fault, but to silently observe the bustling, revitalized diner, occasionally offering a quiet, almost imperceptible nod of approval when he thought I wasn't looking. Alina, once the undisputed queen of passive aggression, began, to my astonishment, openly praising the new menu items, even admitting, with a surprised smile, that my elevated versions of their cherished classics were surprisingly good, almost as good as mine. They still struggled with full, heartfelt apologies, those words seemingly too heavy for their proud tongues, but their actions, their quiet observations, and their nascent expressions of appreciation spoke far louder than any words ever could. They ceased their veiled criticisms, their subtle undermining, and began to genuinely acknowledge, however reluctantly at first, my profound contributions to saving their family legacy. Daniel, my dear husband, was visibly relieved and immensely proud, his tension easing, his spirit lighter. Our marriage, which had weathered the storm of years of family conflict and misunderstanding, emerged stronger, built now on a more solid, undeniable foundation of mutual respect and shared success. Andrew, however, remained the most challenging, the most resistant to change. His resentment lingered, a palpable tension whenever he was in the same room as me, a constant reminder of his humiliation. While he grudgingly performed his new, reduced advisory duties, he often sought subtle opportunities to undermine my authority or question my decisions in hushed tones to other staff members. I responded to his negativity not with anger or confrontation, but with unwavering professionalism, consistent results, and undeniable success, patiently demonstrating through the diner's soaring profits and glowing customer reviews that my methods, though radically different from his own, were irrefutably effective. He slowly, painstakingly, came to terms with his diminished role as the diner's fortunes soared under my leadership. We were not, and likely would never be, friends, but we eventually developed a functional, if frosty, working relationship built on the simple, undeniable fact that the diner's prosperity, which he still benefited from financially, depended entirely on my leadership and vision. The Cornerstone Cafe, now thriving and profitable once more, a vibrant hub of the community, became a living, breathing testament to my resilience, my unwavering vision, and my undeniable culinary talent. It was a sweet, profound irony that the very business that had once represented my in-laws' harsh dismissal of my dreams, the place where they had actively worked to bury my aspirations, was now saved, revitalized, and elevated by the very skills they had so confidently, so cruelly scoffed at. I meticulously maintained my unwavering commitment to Aura, which continued to flourish under Leo Chen's capable and brilliant leadership as head chef. My life found a new, deeply fulfilling balance between leading two successful, distinct restaurants, nurturing a loving marriage with Daniel, and navigating a slowly but surely evolving, more respectful relationship with my in-laws. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, certainly not one without lingering scars, but it was real. It was earned through grueling hard work, and it carried a powerful, undeniable lesson in self-worth, authenticity, and the true meaning of success. Has someone in your family ever betrayed your trust in a way that forced you to reevaluate your entire relationship? How did you navigate that difficult terrain? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family is not only okay, but sometimes necessary for everyone's healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that even the most painful experiences can lead to unexpected growth when we face them with courage and honesty.